Good evening. It is June 13th, 2024. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education meeting. Here is your board president, Shelley Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to open our regular session meeting. It is 7:01. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mrs. Lamb? Here. Mrs. Chan? Here. Is Mrs. Gill on?
I do not see Mrs. Gill on.
All right. Mr. Chang?
Here.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And now I'd like to turn to the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand. Let's begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have an approval for the agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Lim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chon. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chon.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Dr. Choi, will you let me know when Mrs. Gill joins? All right. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the 5/28/24 special meeting minutes?
Move to approve the 5/28 special meeting minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chon. Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chon.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Do you have a motion to approve the 5/28/24 regular meeting minutes as read?
To approve the 5/28/24 regular meeting minutes.
Second. Thank you, Mrs. Chon. Mrs. Lamb. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chon.
Aye.
Mrs. Gill. She here yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Do I have a motion to approve the 6/3/24 special meeting minutes?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb.
I have one correction.
Okay.
The motion was seconded by Mr. Chang, not Ms. Lamb.
Okay, with that correction, Jennifer noted. Thank you. With the correction, may I have roll call? So do I need motion again?
Motion to approve with the change.
All right, thank you,
Second.
Mrs. Lamb. Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. Do I have a motion now to approve the 6/4 special meeting minutes?
Mrs. Ryan, Mrs. Gill just joined.
Thank you.
Move to approve 6/4 special meeting minutes.
Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Mr. Chang, roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong.
Aye.
Hi, Mrs. Gill. We're doing motion for the special
Yes.
meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
Aye.
thank Mr. Chang. Mrs. Ryan, aye. Thank you. The motion has passed. All right, San Marino Unified School District. I feel a little silly reading this spotlight. I'd like to turn it over to none other than Senator Anthony Portantino. Welcome.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here at the San Marino Unified School Board meeting. So thank you for letting me come and share a few words. I thought I recognized you when you came in. I know why you're here. This is exciting. Now it's all coming back. You got smart people in the audience and on the dais. So obviously as the senator that's represented you for the past 8 years, it's just wonderful to see how fantastic this community is. And as a former mayor of La Cañada Flintridge and a rival in many sporting events, it's nice to see the Unified School District do such wonderful things for our children in our district. But today I'm here to highlight one individual. As it was AAPI Heritage Month last month, I was honored to recognize a number of community champions throughout the 25th State Senate District. And your school board president was had a commitment that night to be the commencement speaker at graduation, which is certainly an acceptable and wonderful opportunity for her to address the students in your district. So she was unable to attend our reception where I was honored to honor a number of women throughout the district. And so I wanted to be here in person to talk about Shelley. And Kelly, I'm not going to talk about you other than to say that she has to live with the burden of taking care of her. And so that's also part and parcel of why we're honoring her today, because she does so much for the Ryan family. Obviously, three wonderful children who have all graduated from fantastic institutions, just underscores her legacy and commitment to public education and to education in general. We know that she has multiple degrees after growing up in British Columbia, undergraduate degree from University of British Columbia, master's in education psychology. She continues to just support students in her day job as an administrator in a neighboring district, and all of the volunteer activities that she's done in town and around town in the San Gabriel Valley. For me, she just cried out for somebody who doesn't look for recognition, but deserves recognition. And you all know that. And so that's why I love what I get to do, is find people who just deeply care about their communities, about, in this case, the students of the district. And so I'm going to read the resolution that we presented to all of the honorees at that reception. On behalf of the California State Senate, I'm proud to acknowledge Shelley Ryan as an AAPI community champion, celebrating her unwavering dedication to fostering unity and understanding among the diverse tapestry of AAPI cultures within our community. This recognition is a testament to her ways. She empowers the AAPI community and the greater community. Congratulations, signed California State Senator Anthony Portantino. So, Board President Ryan, if you could join me up here, I would love to take a picture presenting this award to you. Middle here. Do the middle.
Okay. No, that's all you.
One, two, and three. Colleagues could join us.
Yes.
And the superintendent as well. In the picture. The whole family, everybody.
No, that one.
You gotta get together.
Yeah.
Photo for you. Oh, thank you.
Watch the clock. Go. Yep. I'll get in the next picture. I get the exciting part, and John Fairbanks gets the numbers.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let me in one. All right. I'm on it.
Yeah, and then they're gonna shoot it next to the body.
I'm only allowed one step behind.
Oh.
Go ahead.
1, 2.
This is yours.
Like I was.
Well.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for letting me come up there. Mr. Fairbanks, how are you?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you.
Take it back.
Thank you so much. We're honored to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Yes, we know. Yes.
Have a great meeting and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes, congratulations, Shelley.
Thank you. Wow, what an honor to have Anthony here. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dillard.
Of course.
I know you did this. Okay,
We missed the actual ceremony on our behalf because you gave the graduation speech. So thank you.
all right. Was my honor. All right, public comment. The Board of Education has adopted Board Policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters pertaining to the San Marino Unified School District. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have 3 options to submit public comments. First, they may submit through an online form, and as of 3:30 this afternoon, there were none. Requests to speak during the meeting via Zoom. Dr. Choi, is there anyone?
So we do have an audience.
All right.
We'll go ahead and pause for 1 minute. to take any requests to speak regarding matters that are in the not closed, open information, action items. Get this timer started here. Who would like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, we have 30 seconds remaining. If you'd like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, we have no requests.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. Next, you may request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. At this time, are there any cards pulled, Jennifer? All right, thank you. All right, 9 is public hearing. Under public hearing at this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Lena Richter to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and executive team. The Board of Education is to conduct a public hearing to discuss the proposed LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, in accordance with Ed Code 52062. Before adoption, the Local Control Accountability Plan shall be presented at a public hearing before the governing board for review and comment by members of the public. Pursuant to Ed Code, today's public hearing was communicated to the public through the Tribune newspaper, the district office, the district website, and at Huntington Middle School. The proposed LCAP was also posted on the SMUSD webpage with a printed copy located at the district office for public review. Dr. Choi, if you would kindly pause the meeting for 1 minute to take public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Richter. We are now pausing for 1 minute to take any requests to speak regarding the 2023 to 24 proposed local control accountability plan. If you'd like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card.
Mm-hmm.
20 seconds remain. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, we have no requests to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. Next, under 9B, public hearing. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Michael Lin to conduct a public hearing.
Thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and the executive team. Item 9B is to hold a public hearing on comment on the 2024-25 proposed district budget. Dr. Choi, let's pause for a minute to take public comments.
We're pausing for 1 minute. If you'd like to make a request to speak regarding the proposed 23-24 budget, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. And 30 seconds remain. If you'd like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. Okay, Dr. Lin, we have no request to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. Thank you, President Ryan.
Thank you, Dr. Choi and Dr. Lin. All right. Next, do I have a motion to approve the consent section 9A through 9G?
I'd like to make a motion for 10A to 10G.
All right. May I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Thank you, Mr. Chang. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb,
Aye.
Mrs. Sean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gill,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the consent section has been approved. Communication section, communication from the Board of Education. We ask that each board member take no more than 2 to 3 minutes to share their communication. Let's begin with Mrs. Lamb.
Thank you. So I, alongside with the board members and the executive team, all had the honor of attending the promotions of the 5th and 8th graders and the graduation ceremony of the class of 2024. Besides enjoying seeing the joy of all of the students' faces, really my favorite part about attending these events are the heartfelt speeches that are made during the celebration. And this year, each of the speeches carried a collective message to our students, which what I interpreted was to just let go. And whether that means relinquishing control or overcoming fear, embracing this philosophy really opens the door to trying new things and exploring new opportunities, which I feel all of us can resonate with. So thank you. And I want to take the moment to congratulate the class of 2024 again.
Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Mrs. Sean?
I wanted to also recognize the celebration of our students' accomplishments and our promotions and graduations, and also the reflection it has in terms of it shows how much our community values our commitments to our schools, to be able to celebrate all of that together. I also wanted to say thank you to the Grad Night 2024 volunteers, including the chairs, Nicolette, Marcy, Jennifer, and Jenny, giving our students an unforgettable and safe evening. To the old guard who tirelessly worked to make it happen, to the volunteers for Teardown, including Mr. Dave Link, who brought his own little small crew, M&O, Stepan and Charlie for helping to get the job done in a day. And I also wanted to say a special thank you to Steve Talt and Philippa Skandar, because initially we were told by SoCal Edison we would have a power outage that day. And they worked for probably the better part of the day to get SoCal Edison to reschedule that, because we cannot do Teardown without power. So that was a huge lift. And to M&O, because I think they were already ready. Stephen had them all ready to send backup generators just in case. I wanted to say thank you to the cabinet and the board and President Ryan for our strategic planning last week. I thought that time was incredibly productive and valuable. And I wanted to say a thank you to PT affiliates. They provide a comprehensive and responsive summer program for our academics, arts, and athletics. And I know that that's not just something that the parents enjoy for their kids to have something to do, but it really helps acclimate students to new campuses and be able to explore new opportunities. So I wanted to say thank you to them for what they do for us. And I wanted to just note that I've received multiple communications from our community members in support of the bond resolution, as well as inquiring about the project prioritization, the implementation plan, and ways that they can work with the campaign once, if and when that goes underway.
Thank you, Mrs. John. Mrs. Gill, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to Zoom in. So I attended all the graduations with everyone as well, and I just wanted to say how honored I was to be able to address the HMS class of 2024. And also, along with Jane, attended grad night. Well, no, she wasn't there as long as I was, I think. I was there from 5:30 before graduation until 5:30 in the morning, and it was quite the experience. And so much fun just seeing our seniors safely celebrate their graduation night. I really took a lot from the strategic planning session that we had last week, and I look forward to implementing our new goals, which actually are just building on our existing goals. And I really feel like the district's moving in the right direction. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Chang, thank you so much. Mrs. Gill.
I also attend the whole school graduation, and then the last week I'm very lucky, to witness a couple wedding. So they are class of 27 and 28. So we witness their marriage. I feel I feel so good. And then some people said you should check, maybe you already start to attend the graduation. They have the parent and also their kid. So I mean, so then and now I feel I already been in the school district too long. Anyway, and Tuesday night, the San Marino City Club, they have a summer freestyle dinner. It was good, and everyone get together. After school over, kind of relax. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chang, and I will keep it light and brief as well. Very nice job on grad night light up, and of course, thank you to all the parents who not only worked on the grad night this year, but is helping to tear down and set up for next year. HMS promotion was wonderful, and so was San Marino High School graduation. I think Mrs. Gill, you did a wonderful job as the promotion speaker for Huntington Middle School. And we also on the board really just enjoyed the time we had together to plan and to kind of talk about next steps and how we move forward. So during our retreat was very beneficial and a good focus for us this summer as we start heading out to our summer breaks. We start to really think about where the areas in terms of gaps that we want to address. I continue to volunteer at the Huntington Hospital, and then this week we also attended the City Club's Fiesta. Thank you so much for our staff for working through all the promotions, because I don't think people realize how much work is involved, not only at the site level, but at the district level to make sure our students have a great experience. So thank you to all the staff and teachers who also worked. All right, next, I think we have Dr. Linda Delatorre.
Yes, thank you, Board President Ryan, members of the Board of Education, executive team. I just wanted to once more congratulate President Ryan for being honored by Senator Portantino in person. We weren't sure he was going to be able to show up himself, but he did. And I think that speaks to the relationship that we have and that you have. And I'm so proud that we have a person who is in education, who is also an elected official, being recognized and honored by Senator Portantino for all of your volunteerism and your work in the community of San Marino and in the greater community. I also wanted to echo what the board members said about graduations and promotions this year. I think it went exceedingly well. And it was wonderful to see the students being able to celebrate their accomplishments. Dr. Wolf has been working on a promotional piece for college acceptances. He was here recently to provide a presentation to the Board of Education on college acceptances. We do have a promotional piece that talks about the fact that we've had 7 acceptances at Harvard, Cornell, Brown, and the University of Pennsylvania. UC Berkeley 7, USC 9, UCLA 9, Penn State 11, Northeastern 11, Purdue 8, Stanford 1, Wellesley 1, Caltech 1, Ohio State 4, New York University 4, Syracuse 6 acceptances, and Michigan 4 acceptances. We also have just an incredibly strong senior class that just graduated in terms of their accomplishments this past year. And we're going to be working on a promotional piece about that. And that will go to the local newspaper. And we also plan to send that out to the Pasadena Star News and the greater community. We are very proud of this class of 2024 this year. We also just finished the board retreat, strategic planning, where we were able to spend time with the Board of Education working on the 2024-25 goals for this year. That was Monday and Tuesday. We also, of last week, we also Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, took the leadership team, which includes the president, the principals, assistant principals, and directors to the UCLA Conference Center, where we took what the board had come up with in terms of their strategic plan for the upcoming year. And we really worked on our action plans. So we have something tangible now that we can put into practice. And we're going to continue to be working on that throughout the upcoming year. So we're very excited about that product. And then this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Dr. Richter and I had the privilege of attending a Leadership Associates leadership conference where we were actually able to work directly with Molly Grisham. Molly Grisham is the former coach who has turned her attention toward leadership. And I believe the Board of Education saw a video of her during our retreat that talked about bamboo and how that is akin to leadership in terms of not seeing something for 5 years and all of a sudden it sprouts up and you can see that it is actually a productive plan. So we were able to work with her, which gave us a lot of ideas for how to work with our leadership team and how to build a culture of community and a culture that is very positive and supportive of all of our students. So we're very excited about that. Dr. Richter, also as an assistant superintendent, had the opportunity to work with Leadership Associates on literacy and did a lot of work on literacy this past week. So that is my update for the Board of Education. And thank you. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lena Richter, who will present the 2024-25 proposed local control accountability plan, the LCAP, to the board.
Thank you, President Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. De La Torre, and executive team. And I want to thank Dr. Choi for advancing the slides for me. This evening, it is my pleasure to present to you an overview of the proposed 2024-25 LCAP, which is item number 12A on tonight's agenda. So next slide, please. Tonight's presentation serves to provide a brief overview of the proposed 24-25 LCAP, related outcome data for the 23-24 LCAP annual update, review committee recommended metrics and activities for the proposed 24-25 LCAP, and lastly, review the LCAP adoption timeline. The proposed LCAP is approximately a 190+ page document, so I'm going to sum it up as briefly as I can tonight. The board has been provided with a copy of the proposed LPAC for review in advance. Next slide, please. Every year, school districts in California are required to annually update and develop their LCAP with an adoption date on or before July 1st of each year. Ed Code requires that districts update and develop their LCAP in consultation with district educational partners, and these partners being teachers, principals, administrators, parents, and pupils. This joint collaboration is critical as the LCAP is a community-based, comprehensive, data-driven plan that serves as a roadmap for continuous improvement for each school district. Each school district's LCAP is unique as it reflects individual district goals and priorities. Next slide, please. The LCAP is written as a 3-year plan. This year's proposed LCAP begins a new 3-year LCAP cycle. LCAPs are in direct alignment to board priorities and require to include the 8 state priorities, which have been identified by the state as being essential for student success. Each year, the LCAP is reviewed and updated based on the needs and progress a district makes towards set priorities and goals. Next slide, please. Ed Code requires that public notice be given at minimum 72 hours before the LCAP public hearing.
San Marino Unified has satisfied this compliance requirement as public notice was posted through the Tribune, the district, Huntington Middle School offices, and the SMUSD website more than 72 hours prior to tonight's public hearing. Ed Code also requires that the LCAP hearing and adoption be held in 2 separate governing board public meetings. The first meeting held this evening shall be the LCAP and budget public hearing. The second and subsequent meeting, which is scheduled for June 25th, is intended for LCAP and budget adoption. The LCAP item must precede the budget item at each of the 2 governing board meetings. And finally, as we are aware, the LCAP and budget must be formally adopted by the Board of Education on or before July 1st of each year. Next slide, please. Development of the LCAP requires participation by educational partners. In adherence to this requirement, the LCAP committee and the LCAP educational partners and the district English learner committees held a number of meetings throughout the year to foster engagement, input, and feedback through the development of the proposed 24-25 LCAP. The LCAP Educational Partners Committee held 6 meetings throughout the year, and the DLAC, the District English Learner Advisory Committee, held 4 meetings. A consultation meeting was also held with the San Gabriel Valley SELPA on May 22nd to consult with the SELPA for goals, priorities, needs, activities for students with exceptional needs. As required, a draft of the 24-25 LCAP was shared with the DLAC committee and the San Gabriel Valley SELPA to gather input and feedback with regards to goals and actions that have been outlined for English learners and students with exceptional needs. Next slide, please. I would be remiss if I did not recognize and thank our 23-24 LCAP committee members for their time, their input, their participation, and most importantly, their partnership. We are very appreciative and grateful, especially to our high school students who joined us for nearly every meeting, Abby Gang and Daniel Wong, both seniors at San Marino High School. We're also grateful to our parents, certificated and classified staff, district staff, school staff, administrators, and our superintendent for offering their time and sharing their voice, input, feedback throughout the year. It's a lot of work and a lot of people really contributed to this. Next slide, please. The development of the proposed LCAP began with a comprehensive overview of the 8 state priorities, which, as mentioned earlier, has been identified by the state as being essential to student success. These 8 priorities are mandated by Ed Code to be included in the LCAP. Priorities number 9 and 10, as we can see, are only intended for county offices of education and do not apply to school districts. These 8 state priorities represent 3 central categories: pupil outcomes, conditions of learning, and engagement. As we will see in the upcoming slides, the proposed 24-25 LCAP was also developed with these 3 overarching categories in mind, each capturing the essence of its respective priorities. Next slide, please. Prior to the end of each year and to support the development of the subsequent LCAP, an annual update is required. Prior to reviewing the proposed 24-25 LCAP, I will provide a brief overview of the annual update by highlighting related outcome data. The 23-24 LCAP proposed 3 key goals that captured the essence of the district needs and various metrics embedded in these 8 state priorities. They were exemplary teaching and learning, which really had a focus on academic achievement and teaching and learning, as well as college and career readiness. The second one was flourishing learning environment, with really focused on conditions that support student learning. And the last one was meaningful and authentic connections, which focused on increasing engagement and creating opportunities to promote academic, behavioral, and social emotional success. The next few slides will provide an overview of related outcome data for each of these 3 goals, data in which once again demonstrates overall favorable results. Next slide, please. On this slide, we see many of the metrics under Goal 1, exemplary teaching and learning. Metric outcome data highlighted on this page, with the exception of iReady data, reflects 22-23 outcome data, which is the most recently available data that we could gather.
Favorable growth is demonstrated across most metrics. We see significant growth demonstrated by our 11th graders in meeting or exceeding standards on the CASP, the Early Assessment Program. Substantial growth is also demonstrated in the metrics following: AP pass rates, graduation rates, A through G eligibility, etc. iReady Spring Diagnostic data reflects strong percentages of students performing at or above grade level in both reading and math. Next slide, please. On this slide, we see many of the metrics under Goal 2, meaningful and flourishing learning environments. Metric outcome data reflected on this page reflect again 23-24 outcome data. And once again, we see strong growth across many of the significant metrics. Although the data does indicate slight declines in various areas of the culture survey, it's a Cal School survey, the data continues to remain at high levels of agreement in parent and staff perception levels. Next slide. On this slide, we see many of the metrics under Goal 3, authentic and meaningful relationships, where outcome data remains favorable. We are pleased to see a slight uptick in attendance and recognize the slight increase in chronic absenteeism, an area in which decrease is desired. It is important to note that recent research has shown that chronic absenteeism levels across the state overall have increased this past year. The data shows an increase in the number of wellness referrals, which we desire, a goal set to ensure students district-wide have access to academic and social emotional support as needed. Although we see strong results from the parent and staff culture survey, albeit a slight decline for some areas, the student survey, given current perception data, remains an area of needed attention to ensure that all of our students are engaged, connected, and involved in meaningful learning opportunities. In reviewing the LCAP data, it's important to recognize and celebrate growth that's demonstrated across the many metrics. San Marino Unified prioritizes an unwavering focus on continuous improvement to ensure that systems and conditions are in place to promote the success of every student. The favorable outcome data just shared is a testament to our dedication of our teachers, our staff, our administrators, students, parents, community members, superintendent, and our Board of Education, who unconditionally support and promote the success of each and every student. Next slide, please. This brings us to the district's proposed 24-25 LCAP. This new LCAP cycle brings with it a new LCAP template that differs in format from prior years. However, the overarching structure of the proposed LCAP remains the same and does also necessitate the 8 state priorities. The first one, exemplary teaching and learning. This first goal focuses on world-class education and excellence in academics, arts, athletics, and activities. Providing inquiry-based learning opportunities grounded in creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and civic responsibility. And graduating students who are responsible, resilient, and adaptive individuals. The second one, the safe and inclusive learning environments, focuses on creating systems and conditions conducive to learning, elevating personal growth and development, and developing safe and inclusive environments where all students have access to learning. Meaningful and authentic engagement focuses on strengthening meaningful and authentic participation, promoting students' academic and behavioral growth, as well as their social emotional well-being, and strengthening home and school connections. Next slide, please. After review and evaluation and adherence to the 8 state priorities, the following metrics and actions were proposed. Newly added metrics and actions are reflected in bold font for each goal. On the right side, in no particular order, are related actions identified to promote progress towards one or more of the identified metrics. Exemplary teaching and learning, which would be goal number 1 or priority number 1. Again, the newly added actions are reflected in bold font, such as the CAST, which is a California Science Test, secondary diagnostic, NWA and IXL,
tutoring opportunities, and intervention teachers, and so forth. Next slide. Goal 2 focuses on safe and inclusive learning environments, and metrics identified to measure progress towards this goal are listed on the left side, and in no particular order. On the right side, we see the identified actions. Again, the newly added actions and metrics are in bold font, such as adding 3 professional days or maintaining our 3 professional learning days, expanding our wellness centers, so we have one at every school, expansion of instructional technology to embrace and include and integrate artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. Goal 3 focuses on meaningful and authentic engagement. Metrics identified to measure progress towards this goal are listed on the left and identified actions on the right. Newly added for this goal are district-wide PBIS and restorative practices, superintendent students advisory panel, and so on. Next slide. Lastly, this slide highlights the LCAP committee's timeline for LCAP review and development in compliance with statutory requirements. The April 24th meeting is reflected in yellow font because it indicates an additional meeting that we needed to add to the original 5 meetings. Next slide. So this concludes my brief overview of a very, very large and comprehensive document, and includes my presentation for tonight's public hearing. The LCAP will be brought back to the Board of Education at the June 25th Board of Education meeting, where staff will recommend adoption of the 24-25 LCAP. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Go
ahead, Mr. Chang.
There's a page, I think in the priority
Mhm.
2, yeah. Keep,
This one?
no, keep
Going back.
back, yeah. I think a priority 1, yeah. No, not this one. Anyway, so they said the technology ratio 1:1. What do you mean?
So technology means every student in San Marino Unified will have a device that they may use only for themselves to access learning. So we are maintaining a 1-to-1 ratio of student to device, meaning student to a computer, to a laptop, to a Chromebook.
Okay, so it's a student to device.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
a student to the teacher.
No, well, I wish, no, not student to teacher, student to device.
That would be very expensive.
All right,
Yeah.
Mrs. Lamb, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. My question relates to the culture surveys. There was mention that there's decline for staff and parents. Are these surveys anonymous? And if they're not anonymous, they're anonymous, okay. Is there any data to reflect why there is a decline and if there's any way to address that?
The surveys are absolutely anonymous, and what staff does with the surveys, once you receive the surveys, they're administered in grade 5, 7, 8, no, 5, 7, 9. I think I have to remember that. 3 grade levels. And once the survey results come back, we look at them, we disaggregate the data, and then we create the data for each school. And then we give that data to the school principals. They take it back to their staff, dissect the data, really take a deep dive into what the data is telling them for their specific school. And then they set actionable next steps to determine what they can put into place, strategies, approaches, services, programs to really address the areas of needed growth based on those surveys. One of the ones that we have seen that has remained low over the last 2 years was meaningful participation. So that's definitely going to be an area of focus for all 4 of our schools this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. If we can go to priority 1 from the previous cycle, so not the new one. So what's interesting about this when I look at it is we are seeing improvements for a large number of our population, but we're seeing declines in our what would arguably be our more vulnerable populations, students with disabilities, English learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged. So 2 questions, one kind of goes in the other. So if I understand it correctly, these scores are not over time these are not longitudinal data of a student over time. These are students in fourth grade, third grade, year over year, separate from each other, right?
Correct.
So I guess my question then is, recognizing that this is a little bit of comparing apples to oranges because we're not talking about the same students. My question has more to do with then, do we look at students longitudinally over time and analyze is there something happening for a particular set of student or particular student, and how are we addressing that?
So 2 parts to your question, if I may answer them. The first one is, yes, this is not longitudinal. It's comparing data from one year to the next for the same student group. So for example, when we look at students with disabilities, we do see a 4% increase in English language arts and a slight decrease in math. For our English learners, we see a slight decrease in ELA, but an increase in math. So this is it's a snapshot in time. It's the CASP assessment. So the benefit and advantage of now having a diagnostic assessment for K through 12 really provides us that data to take a deep dive into the longitudinal data, identify students not only by student groups, but by individual students, break down English language arts and math by domain, and create supports, interventions, reinforcements to really support students based on their individual needs. And that's great because it gives us data not only once a year, but the diagnostics now offers data 3 times a year. So we have 3 points of data, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year, as well as the CASP assessment, which is given once a year. And that can be observed and reviewed not only 3 times within 1 year, but from year after year. So you'll be able to track a student's progress from grade 3 or K, let's say, all the way through grade 5 with iReady, and then once again from grade 6 all the way through grade 12 based on their diagnostic assessment. So that really gives us the longitudinal data, which is extremely beneficial.
So we're hoping to be able to, because we just launched that this year, we don't really have the data to be able to look at it. So hopefully next year we'll see improvement, but given this year and the previous year, then do you have any ideas about what was happening there in the lower numbers?
With the regards to the decline? No, because as you said, we are comparing apples to oranges, right? And so some students, it depends on the grade level. It depends on the student. Students with exceptional needs have varying challenges that they need to work out when performing on an assessment or even in their instruction during class. Our students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, performed really well, but again, it really depends on the students. If some of them have graduated, if some of them are newly entering the country or the state, whatever it may be. So it really depends on the student group and what comprises that student group. That's why the diagnostic assessments, where we're able to track student by student, is really valuable.
So we're hoping to be able to see some more useful data next year.
Absolutely. And if I may, these 3 professional development days have been highly instrumental in providing the platform for our school sites to take those deep dives into the data and look not only at the CASP assessment, the LPAC, the iReady. Lastly, this last one, we were able to look at NWEA, the secondary diagnostic. And those days have been extremely beneficial and valuable for not only our administrators, but for our teachers and our classified staff.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to point out that the AP pass rate, 92.49%, is really strong for a school district with open access to AP.
Right. No, I mean, I applaud our students who do well. I think my concern has more to do with the disparity gaps from when, I think, and we're not just seeing this here. This is not unique in all industries everywhere, right? You're seeing this big disparity gaps getting bigger. And so I think for me, I love to see our students who are doing well do better, but I would like to see everybody rise together, not necessarily seeing those rates lower. So,
but we are pleased to see growth in each of those student groups as well.
yes, yeah, it's a sort of a mixed bag.
Absolutely,
Right,
yes.
right. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. So
There's a lot of growth there.
thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Richter. This is just tremendous work in terms of looking at the data, diving deeper, but also that continual growth. And as you get the data beginning, middle, and end of the year, you're going to start to see some results. And as our teachers become
better at looking at the data and looking at how to drill down to the specific skill sets, whether it's standards or specific tasks that the students are asked for. Because remember, every year that they take the CAS test, it becomes harder, right? You know, your third grade test is not the same as next year's fourth grade test. And so as our students become more familiar as well, and the teachers become better at using the data to provide intervention and support, that's where we're going to see some great results. So thank you so much for all your work on this. This is incredible. Thank you. I think at this time I am to turn it over to Dr. Michael Lin for the 24-25 district budget. And this is the proposed district budget.
Yep. Thank you, President Ryan. Item 12B is an information presentation on the 2024-25 proposed budget for SMUSD. In our transition of roles and responsibilities, Dr. Choi and I will present this proposed budget in tandem this evening. We would like to give kudos to Director of Accounting, Vanji Lingat, for creating the most accurate snapshot possible based on the funding factors from the governor's May revise. As funding factors change, of course, we will revise the budget and provide an update to the board and the public. On the next slide, we have the total state funds from the governor's May revision. Here's a quick recap in one pie chart. Imagine putting all that information onto one circle, right, onto one pie chart. And you can see that this pie chart represents the $288 billion budget. State budget is $288 billion. And a big portion of this goes to health and human services and education. This pie chart includes all silos of special funds as well as the state's general fund. On the next slide, we have, you've seen this before multiple times in the past, and this represents the latest set of numbers. And this is only the state general fund. And so as we're zooming in from that pie chart to this is just the general fund. We see that the top three tax revenues are personal income tax, sales and use tax, and corporation tax. The top general fund expenditures for the state of California are education and health and human services. On the next slide are the funding factors. Here are the funding factors from the May revise by grade span. We use the statutory COLA, which is the cost of living adjustment of 1.07% to calculate next year's base grant per pupil average daily attendance. We are projected to receive just under $1.2 million in supplemental funding based on the district's 18% of unduplicated pupil percentage. Now, that's also the acronym is UPP. And with a UPP of 18%, our district does not qualify for any concentration funding. On the next slide is the dartboard. This is from School Services of California that pretty much every school district uses in the state of California. This is, again, a recap of the financial projection dartboard that our Director of Accounting used to calculate next year's budget to a high level of accuracy. What is notable is that the employer's contribution rate for our classified employees is at 27.05% of the employee's salary, and it is still going up. I don't know if you remember, maybe board member Chan would remember this. In 2001, PERS contribution was zero. STIR's contribution was zero. And over the years, this has now increased to a significant percentage of the employee's salary. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Choi to talk about the district's projected revenues, expenditures, and components of the ending balance.
Thank you, Dr. Lin. For the 2024-25 proposed budget, I will highlight key revenue and expenditure assumptions that are derived from a combination of factors. Some factors come from the dartboard that Dr. Lin just discussed, while other factors are projections based on what we know today. So ultimately, these models are subject to change. This slide provides a multi-year snapshot summary of the district's key revenues. As you can see in the four right columns, the 23-24 projections are estimated actuals, and the following three are projections for 24 through 27. And looking at the four main factors of average daily attendance, COLA, and UPP, the district is projecting $33.4 million in LCFF revenue. Our model also factors in projected federal revenues, other state revenues, and local revenues, which include the district's parcel taxes measures R&E and support from the San Marino Schools Foundation. The district is projecting 50.9 million in total revenue for 24-25. It is important to note that the projected total revenue for 24-25 is lower than that of 23-24. And this is in large part due to one-time funds, such as ESSER federal funds, which are going away. Our expenditures model projects $52 million, which includes 20 million in certificated salaries, $8.7 million in classified salaries, and 12 million in employee benefits. Staff is still actively coding changes in positions and benefits and will ultimately provide another snapshot before the next board meeting. Books and supplies are projected to be 2 million, operating services at 7.4 million, equipment at 345,000, and other outgo at 1.4 million. You can see lower projected expenditures in these areas, which again is mainly due to one-time funds that are going away. The visual in this slide captures the essence of balancing a budget. When we compare total projected revenue and total projected expenditures in this multi-year model, the district is deficit spending, where expenditures are exceeding revenues. The silver lining here is that the deficit gap is projected to narrow in future years. Finally, we present some key components of the district's ending fund balance. As you can see here, we have the state required 3% designated for economic uncertainties. We have assigned balances and the board approved committed balances that add up to $8 million to meet the 10% reserve cap. And as presented in the last board meeting, the district will have multiple opportunities to revise the budget that is based on funding factors and projected expenditures. The budget presented today contains the bulk of what it may look like, and staff will continue refining these projections for a final budget for board approval when we meet on June 25th. The budget won't be final until it is adopted by the board and turned into the county by July 1st. If there are significant changes, we may present a 45-day revision. Otherwise, our first interim report will be presented on or before December 15th, and our second interim report will be presented by March 15th. This concludes our budget presentation, and both Dr. Lin and I will be happy to answer any questions.
And I want to make sure Mrs. Gill is kept in the conversation as well. Francesca, please
Yeah,
raise
I'm
your
here.
hand and let us know if you have any questions regarding
Thank
the
you.
last presentation as well as this one. I apologize and ask you.
No problem. Thank you. I feel like my fellow board members are covering it, so I'm here though.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chang, you're up.
Please go to the page 172. So the 2023 to 2024, so book and the supplies about the 3.9 million. So then the 24 to 25, they dropped to the 2 million. So what's the reason?
Books and supplies, there's a drop.
A book and a supply.
Okay, I'm looking up on different set of pages. I have,
It's reflected on
Oh,
the
right here?
slide with the key expenditure assumptions as well.
okay, books and supplies, there's a drop of,
For the digital.
oh, yes. So the supplies piece is the one that's dropping. This is the one-time funds, as Dr. Choi said earlier. We have to spend those items that are funded towards supplies. So books and supplies are all grouped into one group.
Perhaps it would be helpful if you gave us examples of what constituted the 3.9 as opposed to what won't be there in the next year.
Yes, so under books and supplies, we have a list. Okay, so approved textbooks and core curriculum materials, books and other reference materials, materials and supplies, non-capitalized equipment, as well as food. So let me see. We have the biggest drop in approved textbooks and core curriculum materials went down from 540,000 down to 153,000. Books and other reference materials was 35,000. Projected for this upcoming year, 0. And then we have materials and supplies. And this is materials and supplies, usually school sites purchase those items. Last year, the unaudited actuals, it's 2.7 million. This projected year is 1.3 million. And supplies can be expanded too. So I could expand that too. It's just not on this sheet. And then the non-capitalized equipment, we're looking at 681,000 down to 581,000.
So can you help recall the equipment? So last year we spent 2.9. Is that's for the air condition? Or
So equipment, we have land improvements built.
2.9, 2.9, yeah.
Yep, 2.9, and then
It dropped to 345.
right, a major decrease. So land improvements was 247,000. For this year will be 0. We have buildings and improvements. 2 buildings was 1.6 million. Projected for this year, this coming year will be 100,000. That will be the biggest decline. Building improvements to buildings, that will be part of it. Would be the HVAC project is one of those projects. Some other projects, anything that improves our structure, our buildings. Even the fixing of the basement is included. And this is from the expense side. We are anticipating revenues in terms of the claim that we're wrapping up. That basement that got flooded last year.
At Huntington Middle School.
Yes. So this is only looking at expenditures. Just because expenditures dropped, it doesn't mean, it meant last year those expenditures were higher. Now we're returning back to normal.
So let's go to the page 173.
The next page.
So the total projected revenue. So 23 to 24 is about 54 million. And then the next consecutive year, so it dropped to 50 million. Is that we utilize the enrollment?
Yes.
Enrollment to project, or
So
about the 4 million.
Yeah, if you, Dr. Choi, we go to the slide, the key revenue assumptions slide. Yes, this one. So we are projecting an increase in state LCFF funding, even though we're anticipating not getting that much. And the reason of that, you see the $33 million in state protected funding, state LCFF funding. A slight bump is because we're projecting a slight increase in ADA. And then we use a 3-year average of our ADA. And so this is the most accurate model we have in terms of enrollment.
For the books and supplies for 23-24, did that include all of the anatomage tables? No. So that's not-
That would
Went
be,
through donation.
that's a different, yeah, that's different.
No, but under the books and supplies, it wouldn't be counted as the 3.9.
Books and supplies, that wouldn't be supplies. That would be more like equipment and yeah, that wouldn't be supplies.
All right, any other questions?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So if we can go back to the slide right after this one. So Dr. Choi, you said we're in a state of deficit spending at this point, but that we're hoping that it will narrow. I'm a little bit concerned. I don't know if there's any point in talking about it or not, because I don't know that there's anything to say, but I'm a little bit concerned when I'm looking at the state budget and they keep talking about the shortfalls and paying everything back over the next 3 years, and they don't anticipate deferrals or whatever that statement might be worth. How does that fit in line with what we're seeing in terms of our deficit spending?
So, Dr. Choi, you want to say that? Go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Lee. So we opened this presentation by saying this is the most accurate snapshot based on the funding factors we got from the governor last month. Something changed today. The legislature passed the budget. Now the governor has 12 days to sign it. So we're still up in the air. Things have already changed. And working with our director of accounting today, things have changed. So we're going to present it back to the board. It won't deviate too much from this because those key funding factors, COLA, race band adjustments, they have not changed. Supplemental funding, they haven't changed. Those are our key and ADA based in, funding. But what has changed is that the legislature has suspended Prop 98, today.
Mhm,
The governor now has to agree to it.
mhm.
So that, Dr. Choi mentioned earlier, we have an opportunity to update the community and to update the board on a 45-day revise. We're going to see how that suspension of Prop 98 minimum funding guarantee will affect this budget. Right. But still, we need a budget approved and submitted for compliance reasons, but we have an opportunity to correct it within 45 days.
So related to that somewhat is the Prop 28 funds is dependent upon our total budget.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit concerned, only because I look at Prop 28 and I look at our spending and I recognize that we have to spend 80% of that by legislatively, 80% of that on personnel. So how do we plan for that? I mean, this is sort of a broad philosophical question. You may not have an answer because the circumstances are sticky. But I guess I'm just wondering, I have full faith in our cabinet to come up with a solution. I just don't know if that's something that we've had a chance to even fully understand yet.
That
Go ahead.
80% is enshrined in legislation in the way that we're going to be audited. And so it is working with that services, HR, to make sure that we comply with that 80%.
Right. So when I look at our budget, though, I'm looking at 324,000 for this year, but then next year, 188,000. That's a big difference if 80% of that is on personnel. So is that something that we've figured out how to do?
If I may. So yes, for Prop 28, the statutory requirement is that 80% of the allocated funding for each school site or district be spent, and it could be the district as a whole, be spent on personnel, on staffing. And they also have the supplement, not supplant rule. And so this year, our Prop 28 plans, I believe, were approved by the board in September of 2023. And what the priority was to expand the arts. And so the major expenditure for staffing on that was hiring an art teacher for the elementary school. And that has gone extremely well and it has been highly successful. And they have now added, will be adding an instructional aid to help meet that 80%. And they are looking at future years of maintaining that program because it has been such a valuable program for the students at the elementary level. So there should be no change moving forward. But again, we're going to have to play with the allocation each year to see how we're going to be able to maintain that 80%. There is a waiver option should you not meet that 80% that you are able to apply for. We fortunately have not needed to apply for that because we have met that 80% through our art teacher and the art aid. But the focus for us as a school district is really to support the arts, whether it's music or the art, physical art. At the elementary level, so they can matriculate up to middle school and high school to really enhance our VAPA programs. So yes, we're going to have to look at our allocation each year and see how we're going to be able to maintain that 80%, which I don't think would be difficult to do. But again, it will be a challenge if we get, a significant increase in funding, but there is also that waiver option.
So if we've gone from 324 to 188, though, then there's obviously things that we are not going to be able to fund.
I'm sorry?
There's obviously things we're not going to be able to fund next year that we funded with Prop 28 monies this year.
Mhm.
So is that part of that whole deficit spending?
So the Prop 28, you have the allocation that you receive each year, you have to spend within 3 years. So it gets kind of tricky. So 23-24 allocation has to be spent in 23-24, 24-25, 25-26. Next year allocation is the next 3 years. And so there's going to be an overlap in funding. And so that's going to be the tricky part because each year we're going to be held to those statutory requirements of the 80%.
We don't know what that impact what did you call it? With what they did today. Suspending the
Prop 98.
and we don't know what.
Suspending Prop 98.
Well, the governor has to agree to it. The state legislature and governor, they still disagree on a lot of things. And he has 12 days to whether sign it or not, right? So if he does sign it, it becomes enacted law, then we really start digesting it. But what we got today is, it wasn't, surprising because that was one of the options. But Prop 28 in the grand scheme of things is tiny. We're talking about 1% of Prop 98. And so in terms of the amount of work that we put in, we are also so blessed by the fact that we have local PTAs that have historically raised money to support this. Prop 28 was to supplement, not supplant. So in terms of if there's an HR component, which 1% we really don't, spend too much energy on. If those positions are hired, paid out of Prop 28, and if the fund goes away, then it's, then we look at a possible
Reduction.
I don't want to say that, but
Well, I mean,
possible.
then we may
Alternative
have to look
funding
to our educational partners who have helped us historically.
yeah,
Right? I'm
yes.
just thinking, I'm anticipating, because I know they are always looking at what they need to anticipate in terms of how to be the most helpful to the district budget. So if that's something they need to sort of keep on their radar,
Right.
I think it would be helpful for them to realize that may be coming at some point.
And we meet with them on a pretty regular basis, except, during the summer when everybody's vacationing. But we will certainly keep them abreast of any developments and changes with the budget. And as Dr. Lynn and Dr. Choi mentioned, there's the 45-day revise option. So if we have to go back and adjust our budget, we will do that in accordance with the statute, and we'll let everybody know, and we'll be very transparent and open about where we are. Unfortunately, we just don't know right now, and it's very frustrating for staff. It's very frustrating for everyone in education
Right.
not to have those answers, and so difficult for us to predict where we're going with that. But what we do have is what we need right now,
Right.
which is a budget that we can bring forward so we can get to the next step.
Thank you. It's a moving.
Dr. Lin, you think eventually maybe 24 to 25 may turn around? I mean, for the state revenue, NVIDIA became the number 2 now.
Oh my God, yeah.
A lot of money.
It's NVIDIA and the whole AI ecosystem right now. This new AI revolution is it's turning the market around significantly. I mean, we're seeing major gains in the markets, which then will benefit state funding. And we're always a year later.
Yeah.
Funding at the state level for education is a lagging factor. So we constantly look at it from how do we stabilize the fiscal state of the district with multiple opportunities by looking at these snapshots. And in terms of the planning piece, we have the opportunity again with the possibility of a 45-day revise. And then looking at it from, the personnel standpoint, how we hire, how we retain talent, as well as working with our local partners, PTAs, the foundation, to see how we can sustain those programs. Not to supplant, but to supplement, as Dr. Richter said.
All right. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Michael Lin to introduce representatives from Team Civics and FM3 to go over the bond survey results.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. I would like to invite Joy Coomer from Team Civics and John Fairbank from FM3 Research to provide us with an analysis of the results from the second community survey on the feasibility of a bond issue this coming November.
Say hello really quick. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Pleasure to be with you tonight, Superintendent, Cabinet members. Joy Coomer from Team Civics. We've been partners with your district for quite a while, working on the parcel tax, and have been working on the bond measure for almost 2 years now through a very extensive facilities master planning process, a community engagement process, outreach and communication, community meetings. We had an opportunity to do a follow-up survey with FM3, and John Fairbank tonight is here to go over those results. Both he and I will be here for questions, and I'll talk a little bit about next steps after he's done.
Okay, thank you, Joy. John Fairbank, I'm a partner in FM3 Research. Love seeing the senator. I've had the pleasure of being the senator's pollster since he's been in political office. So it's, you got a great representative here. And if you decide to put this on the ballot, you want him to endorse and help. I'm going to, we've also had the pleasure of working with you as district in a number of years. We are also doing, we're the pollsters for your, hopefully we get the statewide school bond on the ballot. We've been the pollsters for your coalition statewide. We're fighting over an $11 billion, $14 billion measure to get on the ballot. Hopefully we can get that on the ballot. And Joy participated in framing this survey, working on it, looking at the results. So any tough questions Joy gets, let's ask you. Forward.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be the highlights of your survey. This is open. Feel free to ask questions. This survey was conducted May 15th to the 26th. We call it dual mode survey. We pull our sample from the voter registration files at the county. And as you know, there's quite a bit of information on voters demographically on there. We also have companies that match up cell phones and emails, so we get a really pretty good cross section of voters. These are all likely voters. They have histories of voting in past elections. We did 318. These are completed interviews. Anybody who goes through, these are about 20-minute interviews. Anybody who goes through 16, 17 minutes and decides to stop, we don't count them. These are completed 318 interviews. Full sample plus margin of error is about 5.7%. Again, the dual mode is telephone calls, emails, and then we text to push more to the email. So we're giving voters more opportunities to participate in these kinds of surveys. Years ago, we only did phones, and now we have multiple options, and we're getting the refusal rate is down, participation is higher. We're also going to compare some of the results to a survey we did back in April of 2016, and then also the August 23rd survey that was baseline done just a few months ago. Everything English and Mandarin. You have the option of doing each language. Okay, general community attitudes. Just over 4 in 10 believe that things in San Marino are headed in the right direction. Okay, 80% of your district is the city of San Marino. So these are pretty good numbers. You can see to the right-hand side, 41% say generally right direction. 23% say wrong track. Pretty basic questions. This is how we start the interview. Just kind of an easy question to introduce everybody to the survey. 33% don't know. This is not much change from August, up a little bit on the wrong track. This is a positive result. Living in San Marino is you're going to see a number of good positive ratings here. LA County is 58% wrong track. Same question asked among all LA County voters. About 25% right direction. Statewide, we're up at 60%. And the state's off on the wrong track. A lot of things going on these days. But it's a positive, as this question is. This question is asked about, do you feel that the San Marino Unified School District is doing an excellent job, good job, only a fair job, or a poor job? Okay, 56% excellent, only 28%, only fair and poor. You can see the don't know is 15%. Again, very, very low numbers on the poor, 6%. Not much of a change, little change from August 23rd. But again, these are pretty positive numbers. Most districts don't have these kinds of positive numbers. This is a question we ask that's, again, this is before they hear anything about a finance measure or bonds. This is a question we ask. Generally speaking, would you say that the San Marino Unified School District has a great need for additional funding? Some need, a little need, or no real need for additional funding. We don't mention for what, we don't mention for facilities or anything. We just want to know, do your voters think there is a need? Do you need additional dollars? They should watch the presentation from Dr. on your health. They'll know. 64% said great or some need. 24% said a little or no real need, and 12% didn't know. This is about the same it has been in August. This again this is a pretty good number. 64%. Most districts, it depends on the district, but this is a pretty good number. The percentage of need, if you don't think your district has a great or some need for additional dollars, you're probably not going to vote for a measure that asks for more money for the district. So this is Joy spends a lot of time reading and communicating to make sure that your voters know that there is a need for additional dollars. We'd like to see this up a little high. A good great need is, closer to 40. So it's a little soft on the great need. So as you're going through, if you decide to put this on the ballot, we want to move voters from right to left. We don't want anybody by the time they go to the ballot saying, I don't know if the school district needs money. Okay. Additional attitudes on the school bond. This is a hypothetical school bond tested in the survey. As you know, legally, we get 75 words. The most important thing that Joy and I do is in looking at these surveys and listen to your voters is what goes into those 75 words. This is what most voters either see, read, hear about when they go to vote. So it's very important, and we agonize over every single word. So you can see again the title, which voters will see: repair, upgrade, safety continuation measure. Again, you see the to maintain grade school, upgraded schools, no tax rate increase. Okay. As you're going to see, that didn't pass very high actually as a reason, but I think it's important in the mix. Again, you can see we're just trying to give your voters a sense of what this money could be spent on. Doesn't mean you have to spend it exclusively on what is in this 75 words, but you can see, as you recall in the last survey, safe, clean drinking water was the highest, one of the highest items. Maintain and upgrade schools. And then we give them the dollar amounts, $60 per 100,000 assessed value. And then the last couple lines, we call it accountability. We want to make sure that they know that there will be oversight. There will be public spending disclosure. All money for San Marino schools. County doesn't get it, state doesn't get it, the governor doesn't get it, nobody gets it. That money stays right here in the school district. So I'm just putting this up. This is the wording we used in August. And you can see we've highlighted some of the words. Go ahead, Joy.
I just wanted to mention, when we looked at the May ballot language compared to August, we did make some changes. I worked with John and Adam from FM3 just to change it up a little bit and see, based on new information that we had from the facilities master planning, some different priorities. We also added public spending disclosure in 2024 as compared to oversight in 2023. We learned some things from this survey too. Each time we learn a little bit. So we've changed the language a little bit again for the resolution based on what we're learning here. But we just wanted to highlight some of those differences from the previous language to this language. And then just noting that it actually will change again in the resolution based on the information that now that we've finalized the facilities master plan and received all the reports from the FAC committee. So some changes here so you can see them. You'll see how this language does. Know the language will be changing again in the resolution.
Okay, so in August, you had for the language that you just saw over to the left, we were at 55% to 37. Yes, as you know, your threshold is 55%. We're up to 59%. So this is up 4 points and down 3 points. So these measures, as you can see, there are very few undecideds. This is not something that voters don't understand. I'm confused by the measure. I don't understand the language. Some of the measures we do on other subjects, statewide especially, we'll have 30, 40, 45% undecided. They don't know what it is. Many of these initiatives are very confusing. But this again, one of our goals here is to make this very clear, easy to understand, give a good feel for what this money might be spent on. Okay, so this is a soft level of support. You know, we like to be a little higher on the definite yes, but again, we want to, over a period of time, moving up 4 and moving down 3 is a good movement. It's not easy to move voters on something that everybody has a pretty clear opinion of. But we're making progress. Just quickly on the demographics, I'm not going to show all the demographics. If you have children under 19 at home, you have 24% of your voters have children under 19 at home, have adult children, the percentages here match up, have adult children not living at home, 30%, and have no children, 36%. You can see the different, we want your parents registered, voting actively. And one of the challenges we're all having these days, especially this category, you have about 25 to 30% of your voters are under 40, and those voters are the strongest supporters. Okay, as you get older, support drops off a little bit, but there's a lot of things going on nationally, statewide on many issues. We want those, especially those younger voters, those parents, to come out and turn out to vote, because they are strongly supportive of this measure. Okay. We also do it by race. White voters 35%, Chinese 38%, total Asian Pacific Islander 52%. You can see here strong Asian voters are usually good, strong supporters of public education, and we need these voters to turn out. Men, women, most all of the measures you see on the ballots, statewide, local ballots, if it wasn't for women, we wouldn't pass anything. Okay. Women are the strongest supporters. This is 52% of your sample. Again, there's always more women, thank God, voting than men. 52%. We'd like that to be a little higher, actually. Joy and I are working on something statewide to make it illegal for men 50 plus over to not vote anymore. Okay, this is again a question. These are kind of, I call them crosstabs on the vote, right? You're at 59% support, but you saw that earlier question. 21% of your voters think there's a great need. You have a great need as a district for more funding. If we can have all of these voters move to this side, you can see 74% of those who say no, that you have a great need, are voting for this measure. If you think there's some need, which is 44%, 69%. If you think there's a little need, it's only 9%, but we're losing 2-1. And if you think there's no real need, it's only 14%, we're losing at 72%. This is 23%. This is almost a quarter of your electorate right here. We need these voters to move right to left. And if they don't know voters, if they don't know if you have funding, we're actually getting the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I don't know if they need funding or not, but I'm supporting my schools and I'm gonna vote for them. Well, this is one of the most important communications challenges that we all have these days, is getting voters to understand what your needs are. All right. We also asked, gave them some education statements that we told them that were made by supporters who support a measure like this. Okay. The accountability, the classroom technology, the property values are not in the email or not in the questionnaire. They don't hear it. They don't see it. This is just for your, we highlight this so you can see what a general feel for what the message was. And accountability. This is, we mentioned it a couple times. Troy mentioned public disclosure, accountability, right? Can everybody read that? Do you want me to read all that? It just kind of highlights, right? There are requirements, ensure that every dollar will be used to upgrade schools. No funds can be spent on administrators and salaries, sorry. Measure requires public disclosure of funding. So it's a big, healthy paragraph that supporters say, you should vote for this. We're accountable. The money's accountable. That's 69%. Okay, you get 59% of the vote. Okay, so we want to see all of three of these messages are 10% above what your vote is. So a number of voters are not voting for this, but they say you have something positive to say. That, okay, classroom technology. You can see, I'm not going to read each one of these, but access to computers, instructional technology, property value was pretty good here. We also, in all of these surveys, we're always looking for levels of intensity, like the great need for funding, little need for funding, no need for funding. So we want these up as high as, we'd like to see this at 40%. On very convincing, but you can, this is property values. This is no surprise that voters here think if our schools are in good shape and safe, our property values are high. Okay. Next three, upgrades, safety, and no tax rate increase. These are all above your vote. You get 59% of the vote, 68% upgrades. And here we just went through very lengthy list of improvements, upgrades, repairs. Many of these items are what voters are doing in their own homes. I think, I believe you had, of the sample, 74% of your voters are homeowners. Okay, so many of your homeowners, they're getting the mold, the asbestos, making sure that there's lead pipes, clear drinking water. Safety. Relatively safe community. You saw high ratings for you across the board, but this is 64%. The intensity is down. The very convincing is down a little bit. But again, anything over your vote, 59%, means that we got some room to move voters up. No tax rate increase. I actually thought this would be this test a little higher, right? It's at 63%, 25% very convincing. We have it in the language. We're working on lots of districts across the state and in a couple districts. We actually put it in the title. But here we didn't think it would be appropriate in the title, but it is, as you saw in the language of the measure. So. And the last two, high performance. You're a top performing unified school district. So again, this is down. This is about where your vote is, right? It's difficult these days if you're trying to get voters to vote for additional dollars for you, to talk about the high performances and how well everything is going. If you made any improvements structurally or your facilities. Probably don't want to mention them until you get up to the election. We want voters to know what your needs are, not how well you're doing. And you already have good ratings on your performance and good school district. So we want to build that need up of what you need for additional dollars. And this is based on a plan for repairs, input, just tells how it's going. Anyway, those are the messages we asked. The initial vote, as you saw, was 59. We stayed right about where it was, 58. Our definite yes moved up 3 points. So we've slowly strengthening our vote a little bit by hearing the public information. Again, it's a little soft at 51%. We need 55. So we're right at the margin of passing this. It's viable to go forward. But we're gonna have to do some work. Any comments, Joy?
Yeah, go on the next one.
All right, we also gave your voters a paragraph of opposition. I didn't put it on the screen here, but we talked about increase in taxes. It's not a time to raise anybody's fees. We're in difficult times, the economy, right? District is in good shape. Why do they need more money? They have past money. So we gave them an argument against it. And then we asked the 75 words again. We're asking the 75 words 3 times. The initial vote that you saw, after the positive messages, we asked that same 75 words. And then after the opposition, we asked that 75 words again. And we're staying pretty much, the opposition doesn't really shake your support all that much. We're down a couple points, but you're 32, you're definite yes, you're 27. It's pretty consistent. We still got 8% undecided here. No.
I'll jump in here and just add, I think what we see is consistency. We see a pretty consistent level of support from our previous time that we did this survey. And we're seeing that same consistency here. It is, I will say across the state, and I'm sure John would agree, simple opposition statements, this November, there is going to be on the national level a lot of ugliness, right? There will be a lot of talk about how government is corrupt, officials are, felons. It's kind of a crazy, when you think about it on the national level, it's a little bit of a crazy time, right? And that is trickling down to voters who are hearing about this daily. And so it doesn't matter what school district we're in, we see simple opposition statements just sort of reflect that negativity that they're hearing on the national level, and it brings support down. So what we see here is not something different than other school districts are seeing. And I think it's more a reflection of the national environment and not a reflection of our particular measure. There is no doubt, no matter what, it will be a close election. We have done, and the district has done, everything you can to get this ready to bring the community along. There are not many undecided voters here. We have a consistent about 24% of voters who are always going to be no. We will never change their minds. But there are other voters that we need to keep on our side. And as you saw from this survey, we need to keep those parents with us. We need to encourage their support and their participation. I know there are community leader parents who have already stepped up and said they'll lead the charge should the board move forward. There are things that we can do as we continue to work forward, but this will require work. The work that you've been doing for the last year and a half, and we'll just have to keep doing it again. So I wish we could come back and say, look, we changed everybody's minds. We're now at 70%. The truth of the matter is we're pretty much where we were last year, even though we've done our best to bring people along in the process. So they like your schools, they love the district, they just don't want to maintain their tax rate.
Yeah, to Joy's point, I think we're trying to localize this measure as much as possible. Separate from all the stuff that's going on. This is about your neighborhood. This is about, right, basic things that you do in your own home, we need to do in the schools and making sure the community's safe. So quick conclusion, I think we've covered most of these. A bond measure for your district continues to have support that exceeds 55% and holds that support as we go through the messages. Several factors would increase the chances of viability. Strong slate of compelling ballot measure endorsers. You know, one of the interesting post-pandemic and currently small business owners are one of the strongest supporters and respected of supporters you can get. You have a lot of small business owners. Voters want to do things that help them, right? This is good for the local community. This is good for local businesses and your business owners. Again, you have your teachers, your firefighters, your nurses, your healthcare workers, people, again, local people who live here. One of the interesting demographics that you have in this district was that if you had a child, do you have any older children who previously have attended San Marino Unified School Districts? 72% of your voters. Do you have any grandchildren who currently or previously attended San Marino School District? 56%. So this community is obviously integrated with the school district. So you have a good, strong connection, which was unusual for most districts, to be honest. So very strong. Strong slate of supporters, community-driven campaign, effort for replacement that is able to reach voters in a significant way. Again, localizing it, communicating. The more you communicate, limited organized opposition. Okay, you don't want anybody to spend any money against you. You want as many people to support you as possible. Usually, we don't have people spending money, but you don't know these days. Potential risks outside of the district's control, potential low turnout from voters under 50. Just going to stay there for 10 seconds. This is extremely important. I think if you're under 40, your voters were under 40 voters were supporting this at 78%. Okay. Decline in the condition of the economy, right? Can't control that. Important to communicate key themes: fiscal accountability, classroom technology, property values, basic repairs. Those are your primary things. Okay. Any questions?
Sorry, can you just go back to that last one? And thank you.
Yeah, so when you think about low turnout from voters under 50, there is a concern that younger voters are apathetic to the current slate of presidential candidates. They don't feel a connection to either one of the gentlemen who are older, whiter than many of them. And so there is worry that younger voters who do usually show up in a presidential election might not show up this year. They're kind of frustrated. And then also, you know, just that kind of feeling that the economy isn't doing well. I mean, we constantly hear that the Fed's going to lower tax rates. I mean, I think that would be a great thing ahead of the election. We kind of hope that might help a little bit. It might make people feel a little bit better about the economy, but they're still paying more when they buy groceries. They're still paying more when they get gas. And those are those kind of perceptions that impact our ballot measures.
And here in California, there's no U.S. Senate competitive Senate race. Steve Garvey's not going to have a chance to win that seat. So there's nothing competitive there. And I think we're trying to get a statewide school bond on the ballot, specifically targets K through 14s. And we're trying to get as the coalition statewide, if we can get that on the ballot, they're going to hopefully come in and help communicate to your voters because you have a measure on the ballot. So it will help both. Okay. So hopefully there's some things at the top of the ticket that also will turn voters out. In LA County here, there's going to be a homeless housing measure, top A. So.
All right, Mr. Chang had a question here.
I think this, the November election will be the first time, both of the city and the school district, they have a tax election. So how do you interpret this?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes communities face both a city and a school district being on the ballot at the same time. In some jurisdictions I work in, we have an elementary, a high school district, and the city and the county on the ballot all at the same time. And there's always worry that voters will say, gosh, I'm just going to vote no for everything. But the truth of the matter is that voters, they go with what's most local to them and what they believe is needed and what they hold as values. And education is a value. Sometimes it's hard to connect to buildings, but education and educating our children is a value that people have. So I don't think that the city, people will make a choice independently from each other between the school district and the city. I don't think they'll say, oh, there's two ballot measures here, vote no on both. I think they will say, this one will do this, and this one will help fix and repair our schools. The other thing I just want to say in relation is in LA County, it's very unique in that the most local measure is actually at the top of the ticket, and then they go in reverse order. So it's very likely then that you would be before the city on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what you want to fight for. You want to be first on the ballot. This is a huge advantage for local measures in this state. The only county that puts local smallest measures first, the president is behind. Huge advantage.
As I mentioned, I attend a wedding. So both of parties, the class 2007 and 2008. And after wedding ceremony, so we are waiting for dinner. So then they know I'm the school board member. So I guess about 1/3 from San Marino community for the young group around the 34 to 35 years old, yeah. And plus the parent. So first of all, they immediately asked me, how is the academic performance now? Yeah. So they want to know what is the college admission this year.
Yeah.
You're sitting through your presentations. I've sat through a number of presentations from different districts. Your numbers are higher than most any district in the state. They're very impressive numbers, all of those items.
And then as I mentioned, the 1/3 probably they still have the parent have a property, and then they still probably ID is a San Marino address. So they are the time, they having baby about two years old, 3 years old. They also thinking is that they are moving back. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when they're concerned about the education, the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have very strong schools here. I recognize that, part of the key of maintaining academic excellence is maintaining the facilities that provide for those students in your community. And so I do think as the board has gone through this past year, this really extensive facilities master planning process, which we saw in the survey isn't convincing, or as convincing as some of our other arguments. But you had an opportunity to really dig in deep and see what's needed to support these students so that you can continue to increase your academic success. And I think that investment in your schools will continue to pay off. And I think that's part of the story that we have to keep telling, is that by investing now in our schools, we will continue to reap the benefit for generations to come, for those little 2-year-olds. So I have a couple more slides here. Would you like me to go through with those, or would you like to, or are there more questions for John?
I think let's continue.
Okay. So, oh, pardon me. John's going to sit back down. So just again, I always come back to this timeline. It's because it's critically important, right? We have a deadline, August 9th. We've heard 2 feasibility studies this past year. We've been doing communications and outreach. We're now at the point where we're working on that resolution. You'll have an opportunity, I think, tonight to look at that. And then we'll be coming back for the board to make a decision about that resolution here in just about a week. And so that's kind of those first 3 steps. We've gone through all of these first 3 steps that we started almost a year and a half ago. Should the board vote to put the measure on the ballot, we'll deliver it to the county before the deadline, at which time we will transition to that independent campaign committee. And as I have said earlier tonight, there have been some parents who have reached out who are very interested in being a part of that process and leading it. And I think that's a really good sign that there are people willing to take up this charge and that there are parents who are invested in your schools. I just thought I would share, each time I come, we sort of show how we're helping educate people about the needs. We did send this mailer out just in the last month. We talked about the facilities master planning process, all the meetings. We were really trying to help people understand what was involved in that process. And we shared some of the photos that showed some of the need at the different school sites. And again, encourage them to be a part of the process. So this is where we are. We are continuing to do our outreach. We will send another piece of informational mail. It was finalized today. It will hit mailboxes hopefully this weekend and by Monday. We're going to finalize public outreach and kind of prepare for that June 25th board meeting, when ultimately the board will decide whether or not to place this measure on the ballot. And just a reminder that unlike many districts around you, we've all seen the chart where we're looking at bond measures of all the districts in LA County. You are at the bottom of that list, and we're not asking to climb up that list. We're not asking voters to take us to the top of the list and pass taxes that are as high as many of the other school districts. We're asking to stay at the bottom. We're asking to invest in our schools for the future of the generations to come and stay at the bottom of the list. No tax rate increase. Just keep helping us, prepare our schools for the next generation. So.
All right. Mrs. Gill, did you have any questions or comments?
I just have a general feeling of concern that over a year's work and there's been no movement of the needle. I mean, it's concerning to me about our work, not necessarily perception.
There's not too many issues that get 59% of any community supporting. You think today, and all the divisiveness we have on issues, to have almost 60% agree on, especially has to do with financially, is pretty good. Most districts, I think out of the 30 districts we're doing, I think the highest is maybe mid-60s, maybe a 68. We don't have 80%, 90%, 75% supporting these kinds of measures. This is it's
Yeah.
so.
Just seems like we do have a lot of work to do this summer.
Looking at the data sort of from the other side of it. So a lot of the data you presented, which was great, was, you know, we support it if we see this, if we see this, if we see this. What were some of the things on the other side that were the biggest numbers that why they won't support it? Do you have any sense from your survey?
You know, we kept it in a paragraph instead of doing individual negatives. And one of the reasons is anybody who sees this poll, we don't want to give anybody ideas on how best to beat you. So
Okay.
I think the general attitude of the paragraph, generally we're finding, Joy has mentioned them, the economy these days, taxes, homeowners, insurance, right? Everything is hitting everybody. That's sales, the taxes, the cost of living, inflation. All of these are driving forces that are just, the problem is that they've been persistent for a number of years. They're not improving. So you're seeing voters upset with politicians. I gave you some of the wrong track numbers for the state and for LA County, and most places are worth 60+%. My community's off on the wrong track. That's not the results you saw for years. So you're going in the right direction. But and again, sometimes when things are going pretty well and they like you and they know you do a good job, we're back to the need. Does the school district really need the money? Because their buildings are terrific, cozy atmosphere, good board. Anyway, that's what we're trying to get through to them.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Michael Lynn to present the first reading of the resolution number 15 to the Board of Education.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. I would like to invite again Joy Coomer from Team Civics to say a few words about the first reading of Resolution 15 regarding ordering an election to authorize the issuance of a GO bond this coming November.
Thank you again. So before you have the resolution, and I'm going to take a few moments just to walk through it. I'm not your bond counsel. If you had specific questions for the bond counsel, we'll direct those back to him. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here tonight, but I believe he's been invited to the next board meeting as well. But we can always take questions and revisions back to him ahead of the board vote. So at the beginning of the resolution, you'll notice that there are several whereas clauses. This gives us an opportunity to lay out the need, and then also sets the different statutes and components that allows you to put a bond measure on the ballot. So there are several different whereas clauses. They're just sort of statements that help set up the document. By the time we get down probably to page 2 or 3, yeah. So there is your consolidation of the election. So that asks the registrar to consolidate this with the November election and put it on the ballot at the same time as that. Then as we go down, we're also asking people to print the full ballot text, which is Exhibit B in the ballot book. So that's the ballot book that all people receive in their homes. So they have an opportunity to read the full project list and read more about the need. We also mentioned the accountability measures. You'll remember from our survey, that was one of the top reasons to support this. People really appreciated hearing about the accountability provisions. We're, drawing people's attention to that here. Section 4, yes, so that we need 55% of the voters to vote yes in order to pass this measure. We saw that is possible through the survey. And then Section 8 talks about delivering to the county register of voter before the deadline. Section 9 gives you authorization to prepare a ballot argument should you choose. 10 is your intention to reimburse. And then if we keep going down, there we go. This is where, can we go back right there? Thank you. So as a reminder, you do need 2/3 of the board to vote affirmatively to place a measure on the ballot. That means you require 4 board members to be present and to vote affirmatively. It is not 2/3 of the people who come, it is 2/3 of the board. So if someone is absent, the remaining members would all need yes to vote yes in order to move forward and place it on the ballot. So I just want to make that clear, and it is a roll call vote. So you will each need to do the roll call vote. This is our ballot question. You'll notice this is slightly different again than what was tested in the survey. We have, for example, taken out the word continuation from the initial part of the title. We did that because we were concerned. I just felt like it wasn't necessarily reflective of what we meant this to be. We meant this to be a safety and repair measure, and we just wanted to make that very clear. We are also mentioning the no tax rate increase. We've slightly moved around some of the projects just to bring attention to those. And then you'll notice that we also mentioned the independent oversight, annual audits, and all funds for San Marino schools. This is the 75 words. So that does count as the 75 words, and that's what ballot voters would see in their ballot book. Exhibit B is the full ballot text. So again, this is the portion that everyone would see throughout the entire ballot book. You'll notice that we have some key findings. Again, an opportunity to tell a little bit about our story. This is consistent with the messaging that we've been using in previous measures, having an opportunity to talk about previous bond measures and the comprehensive facilities master planning process that the district went through. The accountability provisions. And then I think we get to the project list. Yes. So working through the priorities that were completed, and there will always be different priorities that you'll be working on as each bond series is sold. So it's not as if any of the exercises that you have done so far are locking you into a certain direction, just that we're using some of that direction to help us build this project list in a way that makes sense and lays out your intentions. So it is based on both the facilities master plan, the FAC reports, and then the work that the board itself has done. There are additional, lengthier paragraphs. You'll notice some of the project list is bulleted, and then some is in paragraph form. We try to pull out some of the bulleted items just to, make it very clear that these are priorities. And then, the lawyers use the paragraphs just to make sure that they're covering all the bases so that you have great flexibility as the needs throughout your schools change over the next 8 to 10 years, which would be the anticipated time it would take to receive the full 200 million. As you might remember from the presentations from Kegent, from Chet Wang from Kegent, you won't receive the full 200 million in one series. You'll actually receive it over different years, about every other year. So this makes up the entire resolution that the board would be considering on June 25th. The tax rate statement also is printed in the ballot book. This is required, and it states all the different amounts and makes it clear that this is a bond. That means taxes. It states the highest rate that could be paid over the period of time. It talks about the duration Of course, there are many districts, even your own. There are different reasons that periods of times sometimes are shortened. You know, the tax rate might be lowered, including refinancing to save funds. So we're trying to give our best estimate in the most conservative way. But you might outperform even what's listed here in the tax rate statement. So it's all about openness and transparency.
I would also like to add that Joy was working with the bond counsel, Samuel Santana, as well as Chad Wang, and I was involved in the editing of this first reading.
Thank you, Dr. Lin. All right, is there any other questions on the reading of this? Mr. Chang?
The page 4, section 9, the ballot argument. So how many argument they can put in favor or just put together one paragraph?
Yeah, so by law, the board, the governing board overseeing the district in any district is allowed to submit a ballot argument to the county. And in fact, the law is written so that if you submit a ballot argument, the county actually, yours is the first one. So, right, anybody can write an argument either for or against it. But the governing body is always sort of given that first right of refusal. Only one is printed. In many, many cases, we don't often recommend that it is just the governing body that submit it. If you vote to put it on the ballot, voters assume that you're in favor of it. It's oftentimes better if the ballot argument actually is submitted by, as John gave some great examples, right? You know, local business owners, community leaders, well-known educators who live in the district. In order to be a ballot argument signer, you have to either live within the boundaries of the school district, or you have to be a member of a bona fide organization that votes to endorse it. Now, the best way that I can describe that second one is, for example, if your teachers union voted to endorse it and the president didn't happen to live here in San Marino, but maybe just next door, that president of the board of the teachers union could still sign the ballot argument because their union voted to endorse it. So that's kind of the exception to the you must live in the district to sign. So board members can sign, but we often look for that community, that broad base of community support, because people will assume that you're in favor of it.
So when it's a deadline, the argument against the board, when there is a deadline, they can submit.
So
to the county.
deadlines for the argument in favor and the argument against are due on the same day. I don't have the county deadline right in front of me, but it's something like August 13th, August 12th or 13th that it's due. So you have until August 9th to submit the resolution to the county. And then it's just a few short days later. It's maybe like August 13th that the ballot arguments are due. So that's either for or against. So that would be part of the work that we would be working on over the summer, is getting those ballot arguments finalized. And we won't know if we have an argument against until the day it's due. They'll notify us if we have an argument against. We've been lucky in the past. We have not had arguments against in the past.
One of the advantages of this November election, in addition to the presidential election, where hopefully a high percentage of younger voters will turn out, is that this is the first time in these elections that you will be able to list supporters right underneath the 75 words. Okay, and hopefully, ideally, they'll read the 75 words. This sounds pretty good. And they'll see right underneath it 4, 5, 6 supporters, variety of people. And hopefully next to that, you will see no opponents. That is a significant advantage, I think, for all of us, especially for schools that have a lot more community groups and supporters supporting this and fewer people opposing it.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, it's a little bit different though than ballot arguments, and it's different than our resolution. It's a new law. Counties are just implementing it. Many have opted out, but LA and County has still opted in. So we'll work with the district to make sure that we're compliant and meet all those criteria as well. But it's another step that is once more separate and different forms and different things that we'll be working on. So we're well aware of it and we'll be working on that as well.
All right. Thank you.
Another question for voter information later. So B3, so they're talking about the matching fund. So how much if we pass 200 million, how much the matching fund is that there as a figure we can get from state or no?
For some reason, 6 million sticks in my head, but I'm not sure. Can you confirm that?
I don't have it. I could look it up. It was a presentation from LPA last time. It was one of those lines. I could look it up.
Yeah.
We'll have to get back to you on that one, but
Yeah, keep in mind, you know, that's getting in line for the state matching fund.
Yeah.
Yes. So having local matching funds is the only way you can get those state matching funds.
Right.
So a local bond would qualify you for that.
But if we don't pass a local bond, then we're not entitled to get in line for that matching money.
Exactly.
All right. Ms. Chong has a question.
Yes, so on B4, there's a couple of those long paragraphs regarding the listed projects and the decisions. Keep going. Yep, keep going.
Keep
A
going.
little more, yeah, those two paragraphs there.
Yep.
So this is, there's two, I always have two parts. So two parts to this question. One part is more for, as a matter of when it says listed projects and decisions regarding that, do we as a board have a timeline of when we're going to be doing that? Is the first part of the question. And the second part of my question is, does that impact the vote to have it done before versus after, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, so I think many districts always struggle over this, like how much can we do before something passes? And honestly, your hands are pretty tied until it passes. You can always be sort of going through your facilities master plan and saying, these are our first priorities, right? And because if you think about it, your facilities master plan still exists. And there are things that you're going to try to tackle over the next, 5 years, whether or not you decide to put a bond on the ballot. So as part of that process, you're constantly making priorities and saying, this is a priority. This piece has to go to DSA. This piece doesn't. Can we tackle this piece? Can we, start this process? And you're just going to keep moving through your facilities master plan. And if a bond passes, it just allows you to move through your facilities master plan maybe a little bit quicker or take off bigger bites. Otherwise, you kind of get a little bit stalled based on your funding that you have existing, because you're trying to do some big things with, limited amount of funds. But you're going to keep as a board doing that process. So it's kind of an ongoing process. You're not going to be able to say, if we got $50 million tomorrow, here's exactly what we will do. For many reasons, right? One is there may be things that you have to consider that you as a board will have to really go through and make some big decisions about. And then something could change between now and when the bonds are sold, which could be 1.5 years from now, right? If it passes in November, you could still be 1 year out from selling that first series of bonds. And there may be a need so great at one of your schools that you couldn't have anticipated. So this language is meant to give you that flexibility to say, go ahead, move through your facilities master plan, start thinking about your priorities, but these projects will be completed as needed and as prioritized by the board. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess my biggest concern though is that we have $338 million in our project list, and the most we're gonna get out of this is 200 million. We've been advised to reserve a third of that not to spend. So we're really only looking at $138 million of a $338 million project list. And considering fiscal accountability is one of the primary reasons that people are concerned about, I'm just curious as to how much we need to be transparent about what our priority list is of that 338 million.
Well, I mean, I think when people hear fiscal accountability, what they hear is there'll be annual audits. There'll be an independent citizens oversight committee. They're not saying, board members, tell us today exactly what you're going to do tomorrow. They're saying, I want to know that there's accountability. I want to know that there'll be public disclosure of the spending. I want to know that there'll be a committee of citizens who will help oversee this process. I think, and you made this statement about something that every school district in the state of California struggles with. I have yet to meet the school district that is flush with cash and has a facilities master plan that they're going to complete tomorrow.
Right.
I haven't met that district. And they all have needs that are so much greater than the funding that they can produce locally, right? It is a quandary that everybody struggles with.
So then I guess what I'm hearing are two things. One would be needing to almost define for the voters what fiscal accountability is and what it isn't. Because I think given that we are relying heavily on our parents to really drive a lot of this, both in terms of the campaign and to show up for the vote, I think what the parents are going to want to know is how is this going to impact my child and my child's education? And so they're going to want to know what is going to be spent where, because that's what's going to be important to them.
Again, I just, ultimately, you as a board will have to make your final decisions about how you go about that process. I caution you to move slowly and thoughtfully, because the moment you start saying today, we're going to do this at Carver tomorrow and this at Huntington a week from tomorrow, is the minute that something happens at the high school and, you know, you have a roof fall in.
Right.
And you can't do those two things, but people think you promised those two things. So there is a way to move slowly and thoughtfully. And we've done our best here. You've gone through a comprehensive facilities master planning process. Your FAC has made a very comprehensive report of their recommendations. You have already started to prioritize. It's just part of an ongoing process. I just, again, ultimately you as a board will have to make what you think is the best decision. But I think if you try to control it too much, it will be overpromising on things that you just can't deliver. And I caution you.
Thank you.
I do have the answer to Board Member Chan's question earlier about how much. Dr. De La Torre is absolutely right. It's about 6 million, but only for Valentine. The total for the district is $9.3 million, state matching funds. This assessment was done March of last year. So what that means is if we were to do the assessment again, most likely the matching would be higher because facilities have aged at least over a year since the last assessment. So $9.3 million total.
So able to pay COP, huh?
Well, that doesn't come until later. You have to get in
Right.
line with all the other districts in the state, and it takes time, just like the last round of matching monies that we received. It took us 2 years to get that money.
And this is the money that if, let's say, we do not pass a bond locally, this money, this $9.3 million is already, the taxpayers here are paying to the state that other districts will get if they pass a bond and we don't.
So 6 million for Valentine. So Valentine would get the majority or qualify for the majority of that money.
They have
Does-
the most need, yes.
And maybe this is premature to ask this question, but then are we required or restricted to spending that $6 million at Valentine? Or is that just what qualifies us for the money?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That's a
something
great
we'll
question. Yeah,
research.
yeah. But I'm sure, you know, with the, based on what we did in the prioritization with the FAC, we can easily spend the $6 million from bond money if we pass the bond, and then we'll qualify for this matching. So if Valentine spent 6.9 million, we get that matching.
Mhm.
That's my understanding.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Joy.
Joy.
Thank you.
Next, we have action items. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Rose to present the declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Again, these are action items.
All right, thank you, President Ryan, Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Delatorre, and Executive Cabinet. The Declaration of Need is an annual document required by an employing local education agency as a prerequisite to the issuance of any emergency permit and or limited assignment permit for that agency. At this time, we do have a few certificated openings, and while we are extremely confident those positions will be filled, this would allow us a safety net in the case of an emergency. It is recommended that the board approve and authorize the district to submit the declaration of need for the 2024-2025 school year.
Move to approve.
Second. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Chong. Thank you, Mrs. Lamb. Roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong.
Aye.
Mrs. Gill.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye, and the motion has been approved. Thank you, Dr. Rose. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lin for the pool of vendors for the district's pre-qualified list. This is item B.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. The district posted requests for quotes, requests for qualifications, and qualified 31 vendors to be entered into the district's vendor pool. Pre-qualification is a valuable tool for public school projects, helping to streamline processes, ensure fairness, save costs, increase access, and mitigate risks. It is a win-win situation for both the school district and the vendors. Pre-qualified vendors do not automatically get projects. The district may conduct interviews to select pre-qualified vendors for future projects. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the vendor pool as presented.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Chang. Thank you, Mr. Chang. So the motion to approve for the district's pre-qualified list, a roll call, Mrs. Lamb.
Aye.
Mrs. Chong.
Aye.
Mrs. Gill.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan, aye. And so the motion has been approved. The board superintendent discussion, any items, Mr. Chang, Dr. Delatorre?
Well, tomorrow morning, yeah, a lot of people going to Cadet for listen for speech, yeah.
Okay.
We look forward to seeing the pictures.
All right. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to adjourn our meeting.
Thank you.
9:22.